Hello from Bali. So I've been here with my family for the last 3 weeks and I just wanted to start today's vlog just sharing with you guys why we decided to do this, what inspired this, and where we are at with regard to Bali, how I feel about it. Of all places, why did we choose Bali? And I think if this is something that you've always been curious about, then I would love for you to stick in. A year ago, a friend of mine told me about a dream that she had where she wanted to slow travel with her kids, bring her kids to different places, and also start thinking about how we can immerse our kids in more cultural experiences. Bali became one of those places because it was so easy to access from Singapore. At the same time, we also know that there are lots of places that the kids can go and explore, whether it's the beaches or whether it's the pool. There are so many different things. But at the same time, when it came to beginning to book for this trip, at the beginning, it was really exciting. But as time started to come by, I noticed a little bit of hesitation. That same hesitation that I would have when it comes to doing a new adventure. I think what I was actually experiencing was this level of hesitation, being unsure if my kids will be able to adapt to being away for more than a month in a place where we might not have friends, we might not have access to familiarity, whether it's things in our home, or I was also fearful that the kids would end up feeling homesick here. Now, having a friend here during the trip was definitely an incentive because it made me feel like, okay, we could do this and we could lean on each other and have adventures together. But that said, it also meant that the kids also had to take time to get to know each other. There were so many different things that we had to consider while being here as well. So let's start with the question that most of you might have. Why Bali? Of all places in the world, why is it that we're choosing this place? Well, when my homeschooling friend offered me this idea at that time, I also got to know that there were so many digital nomads that were in Bali, and I think I saw this as an opportunity to possibly find ways to collaborate with people. At the same time, perhaps build more relationships, start to find new people that I could mix and mingle with, and possibly be connected to a world schooling community. You see, I have been homeschooling my kids for the past year, and I felt like giving them the opportunity to also be able to experience other cultures, find people of different races and cultures and all of these things would be helpful for them as well. The idea was also being able to give the kids the opportunity to see that we could slow down, have more adventures, possibly more family time, bonding. As you can tell, 5,000 intentions, all really rich and filled with purpose and meaning. And the last time I visited Bali was during my pregnancy with my firstborn. That was 7 years ago. We visited Ubud at that time. And I love that space because it's got so much green. I love that there is this sense of calm there and the slowness, the hospitality of the people. All of these things really drew me to the space as well. Seeing as how Bali could be an easier first step into understanding or finding communities, I thought that there would be no better opportunity to do it than now. And at the same time, the next thing I wanted to think about as well was the fact that my friend was going, and I think that nudge where she said, hey, let's do this, and it was a dream, and I thought, no, eventually we decided to just go for it. I made a booking. I wasn't even sure about the location. There were so many different Facebook groups that would warn you about scams that were all over Bali as well. While the expat community here was growing, I think when I wanted to jump on board this, one of the things that I was most excited by was the possibility of maybe creating an art retreat, maybe some kind of experience for artists. I also was thinking about how could I allow myself to still continue to thrive creatively and also expose my kids to all of these things. So I had so many different goals. And like with all the good intentions that we have when we're traveling or when we're with kids, it also comes with a lot of unexpected lessons. And in this episode, it was a really impromptu thing that I decided to put together for you, share with you my reflection, my thoughts about how it's been so far. And also, I always like to connect all of my lessons with our creative pursuits because I know that this is going to benefit you. So I can't wait for you to watch this episode. Lean in with curiosity because there were so many lessons in here that I experienced and I didn't expect as well. So we settled into our rental in Bali, and I think one of the things that we felt was a bonus was that the location's amazing. We didn't expect it because, of course, being here, I've never been to this part of Bali before. Bali is so huge. And I think one of the things that I felt really grateful by is that there were so many bakeries that were kind of in a walking distance, so then it kind of made things a little bit easier, especially with the kids. The beach was just nearby, and we truly didn't expect this. And I had noticed that being here, I had lots of adjustments to make. I think one of the feelings that I was having while being here was wanting to have my kids immersed in a different culture. But then there is this unsettling feeling where everywhere that we went had menus that were reflected in English. They were foods that we could recognize, and at the same time, it didn't really feel like such an immersion anymore. So at the time of this film, it has already been 3 to 4 weeks since we've been in Bali. We have already had quite a fair bit of adventures, gone around different parts of Bali. And I think this is also the time where we get to evaluate if we have met our intentions, if anything has changed, if there has been any stories that we want to share. And I think this is where the next part of this video is going to lead into. I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of my insights, some videos, and perhaps a little bit of ideas for you to think if this is really something that you want to get into as well, whether it is slow travel with your family or perhaps with yourself again.
It didn't start with a plan. It started with a dream. My friend shared it with me over a quiet moment. She told me that she dreamed to take her kids to Bali, to live slowly, to be surrounded by nature and art and space, to experience the kind of life we always say that we want, but we rarely allow ourselves to live. And the moment she said it, something in me lit up, because I had dreamed of it too, of mornings that weren't rushed, of children learning through real moments instead of worksheets, of painting with no deadlines, and of being somewhere soft and open where everything didn't feel heavy. But even as I said yes, a part of me whispered, "Can you really do this? What if I fall behind? What if I can't balance work and travel?" And then there were also worries about the kids. Would they lose out academically? Would I regret not doing what I should? Would this really be worth it? Or would this be a beautiful mistake? It's strange how sometimes things that feel so right can still feel so terrifying. Saying yes to a dream meant walking away from the illusion of control. It meant risking stability and maybe trusting that just maybe what we needed isn't more structure, but instead more space. Our family has never taken an adventure this long. And whenever people think about Bali, their first thought is the beach. And when my family heard that we were going to be in Bali for a month, one of the things that people are always curious by is how could you be spending a full month on the beach? What else can you be doing at the beach? And this is where, when we decided to do this, it was more of an adventure where we were going to take our time to explore the space, and we really wanted to give the kids the opportunity to just spend time with us, create adventures and moments where even the mundane feelings in the beach, building the same sandcastles, would be good enough. Now, one of the things that I noticed myself feeling in the first 2 weeks was not being able to feel settled, that we had arrived in Bali, and while it was a very beautiful space, something felt off. I felt like we were here and we were living the thing that we said we wanted to, but when I kept looking around, one of the things that I noticed was that it didn't feel the way I thought it would. The spaces that we went to felt curated. Everything was not built for locals. They seemed to be built for travelers and tourists like me. I wanted the experience to be more immersive, but instead, I realized that we had stepped into a version of Bali that had already been packaged and sold. And a part of me felt like such an imposter because I wanted to give my kids this immersive cultural experience, but I was just giving them a different version of it where they were familiar with. This feeling of being an imposter wasn't new. It's the same feeling I've had when it came to my art. When I pick up my brush in the hope of painting, reconnecting, and finding myself, only to see myself questioning my ability, wondering if this piece would work. And just like Bali, the intention was also pure. But then, as I continued on planning the days, I noticed that the execution slowly changed into something more familiar, something more comfortable, and maybe also something more empty. And I think that's what's so hard to name, because everything still looks right from the outside. But deep down inside, I knew the difference. I knew the difference between making something that felt honest and something that looks the part. Naming the feeling definitely helped me to connect how I felt with what I was hoping. But it wasn't one thing that fixed everything. In fact, what changed was making new decisions. Instead of staying stuck in the guilt and trying to justify the disconnect, I decided to make the best of what we could. We started to take the time to allow ourselves to get lost in the different alleys. We found new corners of Bali that were not curated for us, but still felt welcoming. And here is where we began to notice the different small things. And slowly, we saw how Bali began to feel different. It became something that was less about consumption and more about connection. And as we softened into each day, I felt myself return to, not fully or perfectly, but with more honesty. As we found new ways to reconnect with Bali, I started to find ways to reconnect with my art too. I started to do a process-based workshop together with my members just to paint, putting paint to paper, taking my brush and just putting it down and allowing things to shape and happen, watching and observing, not to finish, not to show, but to feel. And I feel like this is also part of our creative journey and what it feels like. A lot of relearning, a lot of observation, experimentation, curiosity. All of these are conditions that helps me to hold my work without squeezing the joy out of it. And then there were the waterfalls. I had no idea that Bali was also a treasure trove of natural waterfalls. There were so many different beautiful waterfalls that we could see all over the island. And while for me, this fascination with being able to see a magical water feature in a jungle or a forest, I really wanted to take the kids to also see this majestic water feature within our natural space. That said, I hesitated before every hike. I would worry that the kids would get tired, the path would be too slippery, and I feared that we would get halfway and then have to turn back, and then it would feel like a failed trip. But instead, we kept going, and every time we went, we would go, and in the end, it was always worth it. And this is where I realized it's also part of creativity that we're always trying to skip. We say we want to get to the waterfall, but we resist the climb, the messy middle, and the discomfort of not knowing if it's going to be worth it. But it always was, and it always will be, not because of the result, but because of who you become by the time you arrive. All of the things that I've shared are not experiences that we can buy or schedule or earn. It's often things that we intentionally choose over and over again in the moments where maybe no one sees, and in the process that no one claps for. But this is what you want to think about coming back to. And for me, as a mother, a traveler, and an artist, I wanted one to be aligned with an experience where I wanted to give my kids, helping them to understand what was important to us around nature, around art, and around family. And maybe this is truly the work that we all need to do, not about getting it right or getting it to look and feel perfect, but it's about being able to stay honest enough to start again.